My head's swelling from the gin I drank last night. The dame played me like a sap. I think she dropped a Mickey on me. I'm trying to push the window closed, but it's already shut. The new north wind just keeps blowing. It's cold. It's dark. It's November. Norvember. A time to celebrate the classic dark films with drunken PIs and femme fatales and dark shadows and guns and gin joints.
Back in the 40s, this town was crawling with dollies like you. Good-looking cokeheads, trying their damnedest to act tough as hell.
Hello to all the classic people that are returning. I'm glad you're back. I want to welcome any new visitors. Today on Classic Movie Review, we are taking on the Neo-Noir, The Late Show 1977, for the beginning of our Norvember celebration. Before we get going, I want to shout out to Annie B. for her comments about Jimmy Buffett movies, and to Thunderstruck54 for his comments on The Man Who Would Be King 1975. Please keep those comments coming in. I really love to hear from you guys. Today's film has a 6.9 rating on IMDb. On RottenTomatoes.com, the film has a remarkable 94% on the tomato meter and an 80% audience score. On February 11, 1977, New York Times film critic Richard Eder said of the film, quote, "Unperfect conveys a great deal, a discarding of stridency, a stubborn though quiet-mannered, freedom, an affection for human quirks that does not insist on tidiness, neither domestic, moral, nor conceptual. It's a word that persistently comes to mind with The Late Show, a film that manages to be partly confusing and quite generally lovely," unquote. The great film critic Roger Ebert said in a January 1st, 1977 4-star film review, quote, "It's hard enough for a movie to sustain one tone, let alone half a dozen. But that's just what Robert Benton's The Late Show does. It's the story of a strangely touching relationship between two people. It's a violent crime melodrama. It's a comedy. It's a commentary on the private eye genre, especially its 1940s manifestation. It's a study of the way older people do a balancing act between weariness and experience. It's a celebration of that uncharted continent, Lily Tomlin. And most of all, it's a movie that dares a lot, pulls off most of it, and entertains us without insulting our intelligence. What's quietly astounding is that all of it starts with a woman coming to a private eye about a missing cat. The woman is played by Lily Tomlin, who somehow provides scatterbrained eccentricity with a cutting edge. The cat has been missing a couple of days and she's worried. The private eye is played by Art Carney, who has seen it all twice when once would have been too much, unquote. Actors.
Right, and I'm a Shakespearean actor.
Art Carney played Private Detective Ira Wells. Carney was born in the state of New York in 1918. He graduated from Mount Vernon High School. This was the highest education he had, including never taking acting classes. In the 1930s, Carney worked as a singer and was active on the radio. His first film was in 1941. Then Carney was drafted for World War II and served for the duration. He was wounded in Normandy and walked with a limp for the rest of his life. Following the war, Carney worked on radio and television, including the Maury Amsterdam Show 1943 to 1948. Carney began working with Jackie Gleason in Cavalcade of Stars 1949 to 52, The Jackie Gleason Show 1952 to 57, and The Honeymooners 1955 to 56. In the last show, he was city sewer worker Ed Norton. I can't believe there were only 39 episodes of this show. Barney Rubble of the Flintstones was created based on Ed Norton. Carney continued to work on television. His career dipped a bit in the 70s as his drinking increased. Carney then went on to win the Best Actor Oscar for his film Harry and Tonto 1974. In this film, he traveled with his cat. There is a reference in today's movie when Margot asks if he likes cats. Other Carney movies include WW and the Dixie Dance Kings 1975, The Late Show 1977, House Calls 1978, Going in Style 1979, Firestarter 1984, The Muppets Take Manhattan, 1984, and The Last Action Hero, 1993. Carney retired from acting and died in 2003. Lily Tomlin played semi-nutcase Margot Sterling. Tomlin was born in Detroit, Michigan in 1939. She graduated from Case Technical High School in 1957 and then attended Wayne State. She began doing stand-up comedy. After about a decade, she was cast on the television show Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In 1969 to 73, where she created characters for which she is still known. One ringy-dingy, two ringy-dingy. Tomlin made her mark as an actor, beginning with Nashville 1975, for which she was nominated for a Best Supporting Actress Oscar. Some of her other celebrated roles include The Late Show 1977, 9 to 5 1980, The Incredible Shrinking Woman 1981, Shortcuts 1993, The Beverly Hillbillies 1993, Tea with Mussolini 1999, Orange County 2002, I Heart Huckabees 2004, A Prairie Home Companion 2006, and Grandma 2015. She has multiple movies currently in production. Joanne Cassidy played the adulteress Laura Birdwell. Cassidy was born in New Jersey in 1945. She attended Syracuse University and married a doctor. After dropping out of school, she worked as a model. After 10 years, 2 kids, and a divorce, Cassidy moved to Los Angeles to try acting. In Los Angeles, Cassidy modeled, did commercials, and was occasionally in a movie. Some of her early movies include Bullet 1968, Fools 1970, The Laughing Policeman 1973, and The Outfit 1973. The Bank Shot 1974 was her first co-starring role. In the late 1970s, Cassidy worked extensively on television, including the successful series Buffalo Bill 1983 to 84. The 1980s found Cassidy obtaining significant roles in films including Blade Runner 1982, Under Fire 1983, Club Paradise 1986, and what I believe is her most fantastic role as the waitress and the girlfriend of private detective Eddie Valiant in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Cassidy continues to work on television and in film. Story.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
A typewriter is shown with page 1 from a book titled Naked Girls and Machine Guns, Memoirs of a Real Private Detective. Only one line is written. The quote book is by Ira Wells, Art Carney. The camera pulls back on a tiny, cluttered apartment. Photographs show the story of Ira's life. One of the photos is of Martha Vickers. Ira's landlady knocks on the door and says he has company. He opens the door to see Harry Regan, Howard Duff, looking like he's been on a 3-day bender. When Harry begins to speak, blood flows out his mouth as he has been shot in the stomach. Harry tells Ira that he has a deal for the two of them. Ira says that Harry is dying and wants to know who shot him. Ira is upset that Harry let someone with a gun get that close to him. Very similar to how Spade's partner Archer got it in the Maltese Falcon 1941. Harry dies before the ambulance arrives. Ira drinks a toast to his old partner. Ira meets his old friends and associates at the funeral. Off-camera voices of Margot Sterling, Lily Tomlin, and Charles Hatter, Bill Macy, God's gonna get you, Walter, discuss Ira's ability as a private investigator. They are waiting for him at the end of the walk. As soon as Ira sees Charlie, he says no. Margot asks Ira how he feels about cats, as her cat Winston has been stolen. She says someone she owes money to will kill her cat if she doesn't pay, and she can't pay now.
Well, what I mean is that somebody stole Winston.
Somebody stole who?
Winston, my cat Winston. Somebody stole him. Here, I have a picture of him. I brought
she
because I
talking
wanted
about?
to show it to you.
What,
See, Brian stole Winston, and he said that he's going to strangle him if I don't pay him the money.
See, Margot owes this guy $500 for a long time.
Well, come on, Charles. 6 months is hardly a long time.
And he gets PO'd at her and steals the cat and threatens to kill her if she don't come up with the dough.
See, Mr.
Ira doesn't want the job. Charlie is in all kinds of businesses. Ira goes to his office and asks him what he has to do with Harry. Charlie says that Harry was working for Margot. He says Harry was on the missing cat job. Ira gets Margot's address and heads that way. Ira walks into Margot's apartment. Margot is a part-time actress, talent agent, psychologist, and dressmaker.
I just never could learn how to play the Hollywood game. My shrink says that I'm a very conflicted personality. Of course, my astrologist... What is that supposed to mean?
Back in the 40s, this town was crawling with dollies like you. Good-looking cokeheads, trying their damnedest to act tough as hell. I got news for you. They did it better back then.
Ira says he will deal with whoever killed Harry. Margot tells that the cat was taken by Brian Hemphill. She says she sometimes hauls merchandise to Bakersfield for Hemphill, and on the last run, she stole the money. Ira says that next time Brian calls, she should set up a meet. Later, Margot and Charlie show up at Ira's apartment. Margot has told Brian that Ira is after him, so now Brian may be coming to kill Ira. A man shows up outside, and another man shoots him. The shooter then fires multiple shots into the boarding house. The shooter flees in his car, but Harry carefully aims and hits the tire. The car crashes, bursting into flames, but the shooter escapes. The landlady takes it all pretty well. Ira demands that Charlie give whatever he took off the dead body in the yard. It's a collector's book of stamps. Ira knows that the stamp collection was stolen during the Whiting robbery and a woman was murdered. Charlie confesses that Harry saw the robbery while he was tailing Brian. He and Charlie were going to split the $15,000 reward. Margot says that Brian and his friend Ray Escobar were making deals with a fence named Ron Birdwell, Eugene Roche. Ira heads to Birdwell's reasonably large house and fence office. Jeff Lamar, John Considine, answers the door and beats Ira before taking his gun away. The house is full of merchandise. Ira is taken to meet Birdwell. Ira says he has information about the Whiting stamp robbery. Ira says that Hemphill works for Birdwell. Hemphill turns out to be the one that was shot last night. Margot and Charlie come to see Ira.
Call up Tom Lyman. He works out of the Bureau Detective downtown. Tell him I told you to call. He owes me a favor anyway.
The kid. Tom's dead. He's been dead almost 6 months.
And find somebody else. Jesus Christ, Charlie, use your brains.
Charlie has found out some information about where Escobar is holed up, but they will need to raise $100. Lamar is tailing Ira. Charlie finds out that Birdwell's wife Laura, Joanne Cassidy, is running around. Margot brings the money to pay for the information. Ira judges Margot on her lifestyle choices. Charlie comes back with the address of Escobar. Margot and Ira go to the hideout location. He makes Margot go inside despite her trepidation. She is dressed like Little Red Riding Hood in one of her self-designed outfits. When it seems like no one is home, Ira breaks into the apartment. It has been searched and everything is strewn about. Margot finds her cat, Winston. Ira sees blood on the wall and bed. He follows the blood trail to the bathtub where he finds Laura holding a gun. Laura brings Ira out at gunpoint. Eventually, Ira talks her down. Ira and Laura begin having a conversation. Escobar's body is in the refrigerator. Escobar has been blackmailing Laura about her affair. Margot then finds the body in the refrigerator. When they turn around, Laura is gone. They follow a car they think she is driving. They lose the car and begin searching the neighborhood for it. Suddenly the car turns on its lights and shoots into the Scooby-Doo mobile that Margot is driving. She drives through yards to get away as Ira returns fire. They get away and the chase car is wrecked. Margot is amped up on adrenaline and wants to go into the private investigator business.
Everything's okay. Everything's incredibly okay because I feel so high. I'm not kidding. I feel wonderfully high. You know what? I'll tell you, I saw that little space. I had some possibilities. I considered them, and I made a few choices. That's all. I went right through it. Didn't I? I went right through that space. It was incredible. I had my hands on the wheel. Didn't I take care of business? I mean, I did it. I went right through it. I couldn't believe it. I thought I did a great job. I know you think you probably think I'm talking like I'm a crazy person, but I swear to God, I feel just like Nick and Nora.
Margot references Nick and Nora from The Thin Man, 1957. The TV show, not the movie. Margot at last realizes that the case is not about the stamps. The burglars must have found something more valuable. The evidence they were using to blackmail Laura. Margot thinks Laura may have been having an affair with Whiting. Ira tells her that he is a loner and they can't go into partnership. Ira goes to the Whiting house, but the man is not there. Later, Ira goes to Birdwell's house. When Lamar answers the door, Ira gives him a beatdown as payback for last time. Ira takes Lamar out to where Birdwell is swimming. Ira asks about Escobar and tells them that he is dead. Ira finally gets Birdwell to tell that Laura has been gone for several days. Mrs. Whiting had previously called Birdwell to have his wife stop sleeping with her husband.
And a couple of months ago, I get this phone call from this lady, Mrs. Whiting. It's a real fruitcake, you know what I mean? Starts screaming at me on the phone about her putz husband fooling around with Laura. And if I don't stop it, she will.
Come on, Ronnie, I'm sick.
So I have this encounter with Laura. Confrontation, you know what I mean?
I'm following you.
Laura says she's not only bopping this guy Whiting, but she can't stand the sight of me and wants a divorce. I realize I'm at the moment critiquing my marriage.
Birdwell says Whiting was supposed to be nudged and not killed. Birdwell and Lamar go to a porn theater where Charlie is watching a film in the middle of the afternoon. They rough Charlie up and tell him they want him to find Escobar's gun, which is a .32, and he will get a reward. Ira and Margot meet at a restaurant, and Ira gives her the details. Ira doubles over and falls from gut pain. He leaves before the ambulance comes. He has a bleeding ulcer. It had been operated on twice at the Veterans Hospital. When Ira gets home, the landlady asks him to leave because of the recent events and the lady waiting in his room. Laura is waiting in Ira's room. Laura says she had given Mr. Whiting her gun so he could protect himself against her husband. Escobar had the gun, and it was the gun used to kill Mrs. Whiting. The gun is what Escobar was blackmailing Laura about. Laura and Ira go to look for Mr. Whiting. Turns out, the gun is in the cat cage at Margo's apartment. When Laura and Ira get to the apartment where Mr. Whiting is supposed to be, they find him shot dead on a waterbed. Margo can't find Ira, so she calls Charlie and tells him about the gun. He says he will handle it. Back at the apartment, Ira pulls a .32 bullet out of the wall. He now knows that Mrs. Whiting was killed in this apartment by Laura when the lovers were discovered. Charlie, Birdwell, and Lamar come to Margo's apartment and try to get her to give them the gun. Lamar starts hitting Charlie and then starts after Margo. They are interrupted by Ira calling on the phone. Ira lays the entire case out, not knowing Birdwell is listening. Ira says Birdwell killed Harry. Ira and Laura head towards Margo's, and he has another attack. Lamar is waiting to kill Ira. Margo gives the gun to Birdwell. Birdwell confesses to killing Harry. Charlie wants to get paid. Ira and Laura arrive at the apartment. Lamar gets the jump and ushers them inside. Laura starts making up with Birdwell. Ira goes down with his gut again. When Lamar goes down to taunt him, Ira pulls a gun and is now in control of the room.
Hey, Ronnie, you ever been to Florida? I got these old turtles that crawl up on the beach at night. When I was a kid, I used to sneak up on them with a 2x4 and flip them over on their backs. They look just like that. What'd you say, old man? I wanna...
You want to know something, punk? You were born dumb and you're gonna die dumb.
Margo is celebrating and talking. Charlie starts lobbying for a deal. Ira tells that Laura killed Mrs. Whiting and then called Hemphill to move the body back to the Whiting house. The stamp theft was just to throw the cops off the trail. Escobar had the gun and Lamar killed him. Mr. Whiting wanted to go to the cops, so Laura killed him also. Ira is going to call the cops. Charlie grabs the gun and wants to force Birdwell to pay. That was the same scheme that Harry was trying on Birdwell before Birdwell killed him. Lamar jumps up and Birdwell shoots Charlie. Charlie shoots Lamar. Ira drills Birdwell full of holes. Ira calls the cops. Charlie doesn't even realize that he's been shot and is dying. Following Charlie's funeral, Margo and Ira sit at a bus stop. Ira's landlady has asked him to leave.
I don't know, Ira. I don't think I could take it. I mean, you just never say anything, for God's sake. It's not fair, because I have to keep up my side of the conversation and your side of the conversation. Yeah, that's it. You just never say anything, for God's sake. I want some feedback from you. I want to I want to know what you think about things. You know what you think about me.
Jesus Christ, would it kill you if once in a while you wore a goddamn dress?
It seems like he and Margot are going to be some kind of couple. Conclusions. This movie has everything. It takes Sam Spade from the Maltese Falcon 1941. He never gets killed, or marries a rich dame, or drinks himself to death. Then you have Ira, a once great detective that has a bad gut, a bad knee, and bad hearing. It does take a dame to straighten him back out. The picture by Ira's typewriter was of Martha Vickers. Vickers played Carmen Sternwood in The Big Sleep 1946 with Humphrey Bogart. World famous short summary: when someone kills your partner, you ought to do something about it. This podcast is now completely free and independent, brought to you without ads. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe and leave a review where you get your podcast. It really helps the show get found. As a technical note, references and citations are listed for each show on the site at classicmovierev.com. Beware the Moors.